All right. This is Doug Owens, and we are starting a webinar on outdoor recreation and its future in Utah and some of the outcomes in the recent legislative session. It's the 16th of April, 2025, and we're just going to go 60 seconds here and allow people time to log in. My name is Doug Owens. I'm just finished my fifth session in the legislature. And I'll just run around the room and introduce our other participants quickly, and then we'll turn it over to our moderator. I want to introduce first my friend Steve Eliason, a 15-year veteran of the legislature. He is of the other party than myself. I'm a Democrat, and he's a Republican. These are bipartisan issues we're talking about. Appreciate him being here. He's a senior director at the University of Utah Hospital and a very serious player in the legislature, I will add. Very serious about mental health care policy, health policy. Me and everybody else listens very intently when he speaks. I want to introduce John Harrison, who's the Vice President of Engineering at Lucid Software, and a friend who's got great perspectives on the role of outdoor recreation for industries like the tech sector, where people don't think that recreation is really all that important. And Jason Curry is joining also, Director of the Division of Outdoor Rec in the Department of Natural Resources. He's been director for 2.5 years. Thank you, Jason, for joining. And he runs a lot of the outdoor rec, all the state's infrastructure on outdoor recreation. And glad to have you here, Jason. And finally, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Jennifer Lever, who's the Senior Tourism Research Analyst at the Gardner Institute, which has begun focusing on the importance of outdoor rec for the economy in Utah, or has been doing it for a long time, I should say. With that, Jennifer, take it away.
Hey, hi everyone. Thanks for joining today and welcome to our panelists. I'm looking forward to a good discussion on Utah's outdoor recreation industry. First, I'd like to pose a question to our representatives on the panel. So Steve and Doug, can you share what the biggest wins for the outdoor recreation were during this last legislative session? And I guess we'll start with Steve.
Yeah, thank you. I sponsored a bill, HB 34, state campground amendments that went through the whole process unanimously and on a bipartisan basis. Up to this point, we didn't have any standalone state campgrounds. We have campgrounds within state parks, but years ago I ran a bill that allows us to create state monuments. But if you look at the federal government, both the BLM and Forest Service have standalone campgrounds that are lesser in scope than, say, a national park or, in our case, a state park. And we've identified a lot of sites. And now that this bill has passed and been signed by the governor, this coming session, I intend on running legislation to start the process of creating a number of state campgrounds. There's huge demand for this service, and we have lots of options. So we're just getting going on that, but that should be an exciting process to watch moving forward and help provide, decades or centuries of ongoing outdoor recreation opportunities for Utahns.
Steve, tell everybody about also Utah Raptor Park. Steve is the daddy of some new state parks we got going.
Yeah. So, I think it was 4 years ago, I sponsored a bill to create two new state parks, Lost Creek State Park, and then Utah Raptor State Park. I like to say that Utah Raptor State Park has been 125 million years in the making. We will be having the ribbon cutting here in a few months. We don't have the exact date. It'll have 61 improved camping sites and about 25 primitive camping sites. It'll have a visitor center. It has 2 historic sites, an old CCC site, as well as a former Japanese internment camp, which a lot of people didn't know about. There'll be interpretive signage about those historical events. And there's about 50 miles of trails already existing within the park. It includes the historic entrance into Arches National Park, which is still accessible. And it has the Dalton Wells Quarry, which is one of the largest dinosaur bone beds remaining in the nation. They estimate there could be 100,000 bones still there. So super exciting. Watch for details about that. It's adjacent to Arches National Park. And again, it was a very bipartisan process to create that park. They had to drill water wells and wastewater and bring power to the site. So it's been, about 5 years in the making on top of the 125 million years. So excited about the opening of Utah Raptor State Park.
Yeah, I know state park demand has increased and visitation has increased. We can talk about that a little bit later, but it definitely sounds like there is the need for this. Doug, how about anything to add to this?
Sure. Yeah. This year got through a bill to prioritize 10 outdoor recreation sites to identify and prioritize the planning and development of 10 high priority outdoor recreation infrastructure sites. I'd also mention a bill last year, I think had some significance that allows private contributions to develop outdoor rec development in the state for corporate funding, allows the state to receive contributions to develop and maintain recreation sites. And that program is getting up and running in some exciting ways that Jason can talk about. I also want to say this is not just me and Steve doing this stuff. There's lots of people interested in the legislature. There's a growing awareness how important recreation is for the economy. And so a few years ago, the prior speaker, Brad Wilson, really worked hard to get a funding stream dedicated to outdoor rec infrastructure development, and which is now a small percentage of the sales tax. Jason, maybe you could speak to that. I can't remember the percentage, but it's close to $30 million a year now, isn't it, that your budget gives you?
Yeah, that 1% of all state sales tax is dedicated to outdoor recreation infrastructure due to that effort from then Speaker Wilson. And so it does represent about 25 million per year, just kind of depending on what revenues are in sales tax. But yeah, we were very excited about that, and we've been setting up a really cool process to get those dollars on the ground. And it's been we're now entering into year number 3.
Great. So along the same lines, how did outdoor recreation perform in this year's budget? In other words, are we seeing more or less investment compared to previous years? You see that?
Well, certainly no decline. And in fact, there have been some really cool additions in terms of just some of the bigger problems that we hear about year after year when it comes to outdoor recreation and visitor economies, with the growing demands and the pressure put on all the places that we love to visit and recreate at. The need for infrastructure to support that demand also just grows. So the last several years, we've heard from communities, especially those communities that are more rural. They don't have the tax base to support the huge demand of the public to be on their lands, camping, and impacting in terms of their public safety, search and rescue, waste management, and the roads. So for rural counties, there was this year HB 456, and there is now a funding mechanism that was part of that transient room tax bill from Representative Bollinger to increase and give the Division of Outdoor Recreation a new grant source of about $7 million per year to offset costs for counties of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th class for search and rescue, EMS, waste management, all those other visitor impacts.
Nice. I'm impressed. Sometimes it gets a little complicated, right, Jason? trying to decipher the bills and how the funding works.
Let me just, Jason, translate the counties of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th class so people know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wish I could name them.
Lowbrow. We're not talking about lowbrow parts of Utah, right?
Yeah, I wish I could name them all in alphabetical order, but I can't. But the counties that typically, they don't have a lot of hotels. They don't have a lot of big tax base. So it's rural counties. So basically, Salt Lake County is a county of the 1st class. It's based on population size. So the counties with the smallest population and typically with the greatest need, because their tax revenue is going to be proportionate to their population in most cases. So they say that we've got visitors coming to our county to recreate, and they're getting into trouble, and they're having impacts on our infrastructure. They spend all their money at Costco and at the gas station before they left Salt Lake or Utah County, and then they came down to our rural county and didn't really spend a lot of money there, but incurred a lot of costs for the county. So this is going to make it really, really nice to be able to sort of reallocate some of those funds that should probably end up there in the counties where the impacts are greatest.
And I just want to add that state park visitation, I know, came in around 13 million visitors in 2023. 2024. It was up over 7%. And if comparing that to pre-COVID, a 63% increase, I mean, just really significant. And even in the last 10 years, I mean, it's just more, I would say more than tripled the visitation. So that's why I was curious if legislation is sort of, keeping up with these trends, or if it's not keeping up with the demand, the demand. So
yeah, and there's a comment in the chat that outlines the first and second class counties. So all counties but those. But you're right. Yeah, there is a huge growth in state park visitation, and there's a lot of different factors that play into that. COVID was one, but Utah being on the map and being an outdoor recreation destination, and the people that are moving here move here because of those opportunities.
Jennifer, just to that point, we're challenged. I think the biggest challenge we have in the state is growth, and I think fastest for a long time, maybe now second fastest. You hear different projections, but and it's true for water, energy, air quality, more people using the resource. And it's been very true in outdoor recreation. And we have been stepping it up as we've been talking about, especially with that big funding increase, people like Steve working for more state parks. But to keep the same, level of, people per campsite, people per mile of trail, the access is getting worse overall. We got to do more. There's lots more resources that we could be thinking about, new state parks for new campgrounds with Steve's new bill, and more trails. I think it's clear we need to be heading in that direction to maintain the lifestyle we value here.
And along the same lines, Steve, I'll ask you about if there was any recreation-related bills that didn't quite get through this past session.
Yes. Unfortunately, one of them was one that I sponsored. It was House Concurrent Resolution number 12. And it was pretty comprehensive. I actually had 3 separate resolutions related to public lands and recreation, and I, for sake of streamlining them, rolled them all into one. But I'll just give you one thing this bill did is we have a campground out in Flaming Gorge called Antelope Flats that is operated by the Forest Service. They've actually asked for the state's help to operate the campground. Even before the current administration and some of the budget cuts, they had dramatically cut the staffing for that campground. They had like a 2 or 3 mile road to the campground that had been paved, but it was in such disrepair, they tore it up and turned it into a dirt road. And we'd love to create Flaming Gorge State Park. It's the campground's right on the water. And as I understand it, it'll only be operating at a portion of its capacity due to staffing concerns. It also called on the state to continue working with the BLM for the creation of Little Sahara State Park that's been years in the making, and also look to create, we don't have an official name, but Bonneville State Park that would be just outside of Bountiful. The Forest Service had a campground there called, I think it was Sunset Campground. It fell into such disrepair that they closed it and tore the buildings down. So I'm afraid that's a trend that has been years in the making. Unfortunately, a lot of the funding that goes to our federal facilities, Forest Service campgrounds and national parks, by law, at least 20% of that money leaves the state and cannot be used here. So the resolution passed the House and then passed the Senate committee unanimously, and it just ran out of time in the Senate. I'll plan to be bringing that back. It also called on state parks to come up with a list of potential additional state parks, as well as locations for additional state campgrounds. State parks have since confirmed with me that, like, hey, even though your resolutions didn't pass, Steve, we're working on that list for you because we're we're excited about this. And so, a resolution is not as obviously strong of a tool as a bill, but at least it kind of started the process to look at some of these partnerships. It also looked to explore, what role Utah could play if budget cuts continue to impact our national parks. A lot of you remember during the last budget shutdown, Utah stepped in and paid millions of dollars to keep our our national parks open, which we never got reimbursed for, but we never want that to happen again. So there's a lot in that resolution, and stay tuned. Next session as a follow up to that.
Sounds like we'll be hearing more about that next year.
I don't want to toss in one other thing people ought to know about this last legislative session. And, for several years running now, Jason Curry's office has been sponsoring an outdoor rec day on the Hill to raise awareness of the importance of outdoor rec for the economy. But we had an interesting component. Here's where John Harrison comes in to this discussion. We had a secondary component to that this year, a press conference where we had a bunch of really heavy-hitting tech executives, including John Harrison's boss, Carl Sun, who was Utah CEO of the Year a few years back. We had Nate Quigley, who founded Chatbooks, and many other tech executives came up for a press conference with the Senate president, with the Speaker of the House, with Jason's boss, the Director of Natural Resources, in the governor's cabinet, to talk about the importance of recreation to the tech sector. And Jennifer, before we get, it does relate to the last session. So we had this big press event, and maybe John could speak to the intention of that event and the importance of the growing recognition of the importance of outdoor recreation for industry in the state that's not usually associated with outdoor rec.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We are always looking for top talent to work at our company. We have complex software, and
tell them who your company is, John.
I work for Lucid Software. We make Lucid Chart and Lucid Spark. So it's online collaborative visualization software and virtual whiteboarding software. So it's not your average website. It's pretty complex stuff. And so we're looking for extremely skilled engineers and looking to bring them ideally to Utah. And we also have an office in North Carolina. And quality of life here in Utah is a big draw. And we actually utilize outdoor recreation opportunities when we're recruiting. So we'll go when we go to, say, recruit at UC Berkeley, we get a list of all the resumes of the students who are going to come to a recruiting event, and we can go through beforehand and see, oh, this person's in the ski club, or this person listed mountain biking in high school as one of their hobbies. And we will target those people and actually invite them out to dinner the night before and invite them to apply. And I have had great success getting people in as interns and as full-time employees, because they realize, if you stay in the Bay Area, your opportunities to, say, go skiing, you can plan a weekend and drive 4 hours. And if it only takes 4 hours, to get up to the Sierras, then the snow's not any good. And if the snow's good, it's going to take 10 hours. And they realize, to get to a national park, well, good luck getting a reservation to get into Yosemite. Meanwhile, we've got not only great winter sports in our Mighty Five national parks, we've got state parks that would be national parks in any other state. If you look at Dead Horse Point or Goblin Valley or Snow Canyon, plus, the many others that have been created. We've got opportunities nearby for climbing, hiking, mountain biking, camping. Draper and Park City have world-class local trail systems. And when people come out to visit, we will take them out and go mountain biking with them, or take them on a hike up to the, suspension bridge in Draper, and show them what we've got to offer in terms of lifestyle. And so I think that it's a huge competitive advantage when we're looking at trying to get talent not only to come here, but also to stay here from our top universities. We've got people getting offers from Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and they know that if they go to those areas, they're not going to have the opportunity to have the lifestyle that they've grown accustomed to living here in Utah. So it's been great for us, and it's definitely a draw.
So, John, let me just ask you, how many employees there in Draper at Lucid Software?
So yeah, we're headquartered actually in South Jordan, right at the Front Runner station, the Sojo station there. And we've got worldwide, we're about 1,100 employees. In South Jordan, we got about 600 of them.
600 employees, and people don't think of that when they drive by it in off I-15. You see that big sign on the building.
Yeah.
They don't think of that as an outdoor rec company, but it's here. It's here because you're able to recruit all those engineers based on outdoor rec. And I've heard your boss say he really wanted to, he resisted calls to locate the company in Silicon Valley in California because he wanted to ski before work.
Yeah, and he actually utilized, like, a lot of our early employees are people he ran into like on the ski lifts. And it's if you do talk to people when you're on the lifts, you're constantly running into somebody who said, "Oh, I was in finance in Chicago, but loved to ski so much that I just moved to Park City, and so I'm a local now." And so yeah, I think we bring in talented people because of the opportunities that we have in order to get outside and do the things that people enjoy.
So there's really an untold, Jennifer, I'm going to turn this back over to you in a sec, but there's really an untold story that needs to be, that's beginning to be told about how important outdoor rec is to the economy. It isn't just about river guides or, somebody owning a hotel by a national park. It's really, it underpins the whole tech sector, for example.
People come here, they enjoy the outdoor recreation and, the quality of life and stay sometimes. So, John, do you think there are ways in which the outdoor recreation sector and tech industry sector can better support one another?
Yeah, so I think that the rec sector does a great job of supporting not just tech, but everyone here in Utah, and just provides amazing opportunities. Looking at it the other way, how does tech support outdoor rec? We bring passionate individuals, about their, particular hobbies into the area, and they become advocates for outdoor recreation. But I think also the tech sector somewhat takes for granted the opportunities that their employees have here. And also any involvement quickly becomes very political. So if you're concerned about traffic in the canyons and access to skiing, well, that's a big political issue, and that quickly becomes divisive. If you love the Zen Trail System or Mose Valley area down in St. George, well, it's possible that the state trust lands are going to develop those into high density housing. That's a political issue very, very quickly. One area that affects us when we do recruiting is air quality. We've got this office, just across I-15 that has this amazing view of Little Cottonwood Canyon and Lone Peak, but we've had people come to visit on days where you can't see the mountains either because of, accumulated pollution from the inversion or frankly dust blowing off of Point of the Mountain. And that, can be a turnoff, but also that's a political issue. And so I think that, the Silicon Slopes group and the tech industry in general is very careful in how it spends its political capital. And I don't think we're necessarily as engaged on these issues as we could be.
All right, sounds good. Question for the group. How does collaboration between Utah legislators and the Division of Outdoor Recreation help shape policy? Talk a little bit about that collaboration.
Well, I'll say right away that the collaboration is pretty widespread. Representative Owens mentioned the Outdoor Recreation Day on the Hill. We also have a caucus. There are caucuses around legislatures and even the federal government that have to do with mining and industry and agriculture. So the question was asked a few years ago, why not have a caucus that is about tourism and outdoor recreation? So that is it's a policy shaping body. We talk about the issues and help in a bipartisan way to really figure out how best to suit the growing needs and demands of outdoor recreation in the state. We have the Adopt the Outdoors program that Representative Owens mentioned, and just making that connection between legislators and the industry and the division of where we can make a difference in terms of their giving, their opportunities to donate and to give time. HB 34 with state campgrounds. That's exciting. Well, there is a shortage of campgrounds in certain areas around the state. In Salt Lake County, for example, there are very few campgrounds. And if you just drive across the border into Utah County, they've got a lot more. Representative Owens talked about the priority areas that his bill was directing us to identify. So we're excited about that because overall, development, recreation, economic needs are all kind of an intricate mix, and this will help us to make sure we're being purposeful and doing the right thing in the right place at the right time.
Here, I'll give an example of collaboration, Jennifer. I'm going to ask Jason right now for a list of recommendations for potential campgrounds and or state parks that we can put on our radar to start creating or researching to potentially designate for this coming session. So, Jason, hopefully you're up to the challenge.
Yeah, there are a lot of places. You already mentioned Antelope Flat up there at Fleming Gorge, amazing opportunity. Little Sahara Sand Dunes, a lot of traffic. This coming weekend is going to be so busy down there that we'll have pretty much every law enforcement officer in the state, as far as the DNR, down there to help those efforts. I think there's some really good opportunities in Southeast Utah to take some of the overflow off of places like Moab, and Southwest Utah, places like Sand Hollow. Those places are completely booked. So we can have some state campgrounds in adjacent areas where it's a little bit more off the beaten path. So it spreads out that traffic and that concentration of people a little bit more.
A great example of that is like Dead Horse Point State Park. When Arches gets closed to additional visitors, which happens too frequently, they often overflow to Dead Horse Point. And continuing to look for what other areas we can do those types of things in. Just as an interesting side note, and I'd love to again work with Jason's office on this, but with the opening of Utah Raptor State Park, we are hoping to partner with the National Park Service to create a shuttle system where when Arches closes to visitors, they could just drive a few miles down the road, park at Utah Raptor State Park, jump on board a shuttle bus that would be circulating throughout Arches, not creating any additional parking needs within the park, but creating a mechanism whereby nobody's going to be locked out of Arches when they've made the journey here to see that great national treasure. So anyway, just something to think about, Jason.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And then one more thing on a similar note, a trail connecting Utah Raptor to Arches that people can ride bikes, including e-bikes.
And that's under construction, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Very exciting.
Okay. We want to extend it through Raptors Park into the historic entrance of Arches. So more to talk about there.
Yeah. And then speaking to, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of Utah Raptor, this week we'll be hosting some guests there. State Parks will be hosting some guests, including descendants of some of the internment camp folks that were there. They're coming over from Japan, as well as some descendants of some of the original CCC people that helped maintain and build afterwards. So watching the news for some really exciting and cool historical things on Utah Raptor.
When you're throwing down that gauntlet, Steve, for a list by next session, I love hearing that. And, we need to be smart about looking around, and Jason and his friends in the State Park Service and others in his terrific office, Tara McKee and others. There's some great people looking at these issues all the time. One issue I wonder about too is looking westward, because we tend to look southward and when we think about developing outdoor rec in Utah. And the Great Basin is an underutilized resource, and it's proximate to our Wasatch Front, and if I think about the west side of the Oakers, there's tremendous recreation potential there. And also the next range over, Stansbury's unbelievably beautiful. And I really shouldn't be saying this in public because I kind of want to keep it to myself. But when we think about accommodating visitorship, I live near Mill Creek Canyon, and you can't go there on a Saturday hardly, because there's so much traffic going up there. And it would be nice if people didn't have to cross to the east side of town to get up a canyon. The day could come, and it should come soon, when we can go west to get up a canyon.
I'll just give a little tip for all of our listeners. If you've never hiked Deseret Peak out in the Stansbury Range, I would strongly recommend it. It's not a scary trail. It's just over 11,000 feet, and you'll hardly see anybody there. There is a campground out there also, but duly noted, Doug. I'll be listening, staying tuned for recommendations from you for options for further west.
Well, and the thing, we got to be smart too, because we got all this federal land, and we have a couple of parks that are adjacent to federal lands, where we just put the visitor center and the campground adjacent to the federal land. Then we work with the BLM or Forest Service to run some trails into the federal land, so we can encourage greater use of federal land that way too. That's something.
So one interesting factoid is about 50% of our state parks came by the state acquiring federal land under the Recreation and Public Purpose Act. Actually, Research Park was acquired under the Recreation and Public Purpose Act, that allows states to obtain federal land if it's going to be used for a public purpose. And so that's a mechanism that we're looking to utilize. One example you mentioned, Doug, is Monte Cristo up north, surrounded by fantastic trails and snowmobiling opportunities. The state owns land kind of smack dab in the middle that actually is used for a parking lot. We're looking to create a campground there where we could create, restroom and other facilities, so the land is not, abused. Another area that we're looking at is potentially creating a San Rafael Swell campground right in the middle of 5 wilderness study areas. There's effectively zero services or camping opportunities down there other than just completely, primitive options. And so, yeah, stay tuned. Great thinking there, Doug.
More campgrounds, more pit toilets. I'm always the guy who can tell you where we needed a pit toilet when we didn't have one. And Jason mentioned the Adopt the Outdoors program, which, just to be clear, that's the name of the program that was in my bill a couple of years ago that allows the private contribution. I think industry ought to be stepping up more and helping fund some of this stuff, because it really maintains their business model to have Utah be a highly livable, wonderful place to live. And I hope that program, it's just getting up and running now, and I hope that industry will be supportive of that going forward.
I hope so too. In fact, we've now got opportunities for those businesses that you're talking about to go on and select and actually make an adoption throughout the state. So we've got several projects to choose from and start right away. And there's a link that Carly has posted into the chat. Perfect.
Great. I'm seeing some comments come in about Vernal and Price and Eastern Utah outdoor recreation opportunities. The NCIA high school mountain biking. I just want to comment, my daughter was on one of the first mountain biking teams at her high school, and traveling for those events is a great way. You could probably talk a little bit about that, Jason, but that seems to be an economic driver as well. Sounds like the big issues, we need more campgrounds, we need to distribute visitation, and these are some ways. Is there anything else in the upcoming legislative session that we may want to focus on?
I'll throw out an idea that is, it's probably too early to even say this, but some years ago, there was a lot of discussion and a group kind of created called One Wasatch about connecting the resorts on the Wasatch Front and the Wasatch Back, with the addition of 4 ski lifts, approximately 4 ski lifts. Alta, Snowbird, Brighton, Solitude, Park City, and Deer Valley could all be one gigantic, kind of connected resort, each maintain their own identities. But then that would help reduce traffic in the canyons. My personal preference is hope that would eliminate the need for a gondola up the canyon. It would create the largest ski resort, ski area in North America, very similar to what they have in Europe. And I think that 2034, the Winter Olympics, would be a great deadline to shoot for to potentially do something like that. So I'm kind of kicking around ideas of how the state could help facilitate something like that. And I just think that could be an exciting opportunity, for winter outdoor recreation.
And
Great.
Jennifer, that's very interesting, Steve, to hear about that idea. In John's industry, the Silicon Slopes folks, I've been working with the group there to put together a list of asks from the tech sector, which is now more than 1 in 7 jobs in the state. That was 1 in 7, 6 or 7 years ago when that last study was done. It's probably 1 in 5 or 6 now. Jobs in the state is in the tech sector. And, that industry, from just anecdotal evidence I hear, people in that industry want to have more active transportation routes. They want to bring the outdoors closer to them, right? So they want to bike to work. They want to have trail systems that come into neighborhoods where they can connect. They don't have to drive half an hour to get up a canyon or more, right? If you're lucky, it's a half an hour. But you can actually start out from your house and you can get up the canyon on a trail system. So trail connectivity into suburban and urban areas would really be a neat development. And other asks like that, just more miles of trails, more state parks. Steve's been driving the issue, and doing it proximate to where people live, which is, Utah is one of the most concentrated populations of any state. We're right here on the Wasatch Front. Let's do more of that and keep the Wasatch Front livable, where we don't have to get, like John was talking about, skiing in California, where you got to devote the whole weekend to getting outside. We want to get out before or after work. That's the cool thing we have here. We've got to maintain that. So making sure we do that, some of that recreation, a lot of that recreation development close to home.
Okay, great. Before we start to wrap up, I do have one question talking about the idea of balance. So we have, more use of our outdoor recreation opportunities, and then more visitors and more use. Talking specifically, Jason, talking about that balance, and a question just came in speaking about the TRT, the transient room tax revenue, and changes to the uses for that revenue. Can you talk a little bit about achieving balance here?
Sure. Yeah, I think balance is huge. We're going to keep growing. We already know that, that just the outdoor economy alone is $9+ billion to Utah's GDP. But as has been mentioned, and we know 79% of tech workers that relocated to Utah did so. And number one reason is because of outdoor recreation. 83% of them that relocated here after having left cite that same reason. So all these pillars of our economy, including tech and everything else. So I think it's bringing in more private sector collaboration. That's the way to achieve that balance. And being careful in our planning. We've seen places around the state where recreation growth has taken place sort of organically. If you can use a garden metaphor, it's kind of a weed patch in some places because of a lack of planning. So I know that Carly posted into the chat an opportunity for assistance in that planning effort. If there's rural communities or any community that wants help in analyzing that balance to make sure that they're planning carefully, that's how we get there. Our economy keeps getting called out for being strongest, fastest growing. And Utah's been a leader in outdoor recreation since 2013 when the office was first formed. And since then, 23 other states have followed our lead, and they continue to follow our lead, not just as a concept, but things like the Tour Caucus and the Outdoor Recreation Day on the Hill and the Trails Conference and our summit. All these ideas that were born and incubated here in Utah are being replicated in other states all over the country.
Hey, Jennifer. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I was just going to hit on the TRT question really quickly.
Great.
Yeah, that HB 456, I mentioned a little bit about the search and rescue grant in the beginning. So some of the uses, because all counties got an increase, and they also got some additional authority on how they might be able to use their existing transient room taxes. So when people stay in a hotel, they're paying a little bit more, and those funds can now go towards search and rescue, towards EMS and the roads and the waste management stuff, not just in the the counties of the third, fourth, and fifth class, those are grant-based, but even in the first and second class counties, they're still going to get that funding and have greater latitude on how they put those dollars to work.
Great. I think that's good. I have a few questions that have come in that I would like to touch on, and then maybe we can get to our last thoughts before we end. But one question is about accessibility, particularly for aging population or people with disabilities and accessing outdoor recreation. Can anybody speak to that? I know Utah has the National Disability Center, and also I believe I can't think of the name, but there are a few here. It's kind of I feel like Utah's a leader in this area. So if anyone wants to touch on that.
Yeah, in some ways we are leaders. We have Wasatch Adaptive Sports. We have National Ability Center. There is an outfit in Cache County. There's an outfit in Southern Utah. There are several of them, and we have grants that we use to help support their efforts, and just a lot of really good work. Passionate people who want to not only provide opportunities, but also advocate for the uses and for the inclusivity of the adaptive world. A lot of our trail design, and anytime we're hearing grant proposals about trails, that's something that's always on our mind. Putting equipment into our state parks that are designed for adaptive users so that they don't have to bring some specialized piece of equipment. That the way I look at it is, yeah, we have wheelchair ramps at all different places around the state. We can't put a wheelchair ramp on a trail, and we can't pave the whole thing, but we can put equipment there that adaptive users can use to access. And we're excited about the future on that. We're going to make some real progress. Tennessee leads the country, but we're chasing Tennessee.
I would add, Utah, through legislation run by Senator Todd Weiler several years ago, became a leader in terms of treating pedal e-bikes, not e-motorcycles, which is a whole different problem, but the pedal assist e-bikes as mountain bikes. And so if you are on a trail that is controlled by the state or an entity kind of below the state in the hierarchy, by default, if a bicycle is allowed there, you are allowed to ride an e-bike there unless the local controlling authority has made a law otherwise. And Park City is kind of the big exception there. But if you're on a state trail, you are good to go. And that also has huge benefits, not only for older people, but the adaptive community. And even just families where you have different levels of ability allows people to get out together and have an experience together. Right.
Yep. And Phil brought up the point of the motorized community. We've seen closures around the state in different areas, which sometimes some closures are needed to close areas from motorized, but it's also you're excluding people from accessing some really beautiful places around the state when you're operating from a closure mindset. We also need to, speaking of e-bikes, John, we need to get the federal agencies on board with our definition of what a bicycle is, and it includes Class 1 e-bikes.
Yep.
I'll just mention real quick that this is a topic that hits close to home. I was at Snow Canyon State Park last week with my family. I have a daughter with severe disabilities, and as we were getting ready to head out on the trail, we quickly realized her wheelchair is not going to work. So I headed off on the bike trail as the family headed out to go explore the lava tubes. There was an article in the Tribune just a few weeks ago about a Utah-based company called Huckleberry Hiking that makes this fabulous tandem hiker bike with one wheel that kind of connects like a backpack. And so I've been in touch with that company and looking to maybe acquire one of those. So it was exciting to see that the homegrown need created a Utah-based company to meet those types of specialized outdoor recreation needs.
And also I see a comment about where grants are available for groups that advocate for people with disabilities to use the outdoor. So
yeah. Very easy to find, recreation.utah.gov/grants, and lists all of the grants that we have.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thanks. Okay, quickly, a couple more questions. John, maybe this might be for you. How can innovation and data from the tech sector support better management, access, or promotion of Utah's outdoor resources? Is there any active collaboration going on right now?
I'm not aware of any, but there's an enormous amount of data being collected. Some of you might be aware, a few years ago, users of Strava, which is program that runners and cyclists use to track their workouts inadvertently revealed the location of forward operating bases in Afghanistan through the heat map feature because it shows what areas are getting the most use. And you can go and zoom in on, and they've cleaned up that so that we're not revealing national secrets at this point. But you can go zoom in on Draper and see which trails are most popular. And I think that tools like that would be enormously helpful to those planning trails and looking at where we need more infrastructure to, kind of see where, you talk about looking at the grass and where people have already, made a path and going through and paving that it's a way to lead us towards better decision making.
There's amazing data that's available from technology. People's iPhones tell a lot about them. There's analysis now around Bears Ears that I've been involved in developing that shows where people are coming, who's from out of state, where are they going off road, where are they staying on road, what are they visiting, how many people are there. It can be really used more than it has been to allocate resources.
Great. And a comment saying Blue Ribbon Coalition is working diligently on the e-bike classification, just to add that on. Last question before we wrap up. What locations are most at risk right now due to mineral rights? Someone wants to know.
I don't know any specifics on that one. Sorry,
Yeah,
but I think
okay.
overall, it's something that we have to be diligent on, because there's a fine balance. And I think, going back to the earlier question about collaborating and getting cooperation from the legislature, I get a question asked of me all the time when I'm meeting with my counterparts in other states. How do you get such great support from your state legislature? My answer is always the same. It's because they're users. They love public lands, and they are the ones that are out there doing it. I know that Representative Owens, Representative Eliason, I've seen President of the Senate on the ski hill. I've seen Speaker Schultz out on Farmington Bay, waterfowl. So we have a very supportive legislature that love our public lands, and I think responsible development, and when it comes to everything from housing to minerals and everything else, it's a part of what we do, and it's part of who we are. Utah gets a little bit of a bad rap when it comes to public lands management and policy, but overall, I think we do an excellent job.
I think that's really a hard and economic question that's being asked, and I don't know of specific locations right now where we're looking at mineral extraction versus a recreational use. There is John alluded to, there's a specific debate right now ongoing about St. George, whether to turn some trails over to housing. That's usually a more pressing issue, frankly, the housing and the urban expansion, but then it is mineral extraction. But it's fundamentally an economic issue that's being asked there. And I think that as we go forward, where it's important to focus an analysis is on the economics of outdoor rec and recognizing this is why Lucid software is in Utah. It's not just about the river guide and the fly fishing industry and the hotels by national parks. It's really all of us who are valuing building a business and being employed in the state of Utah. And so I think if we focus on the economics, it will help make those allocation of resource decisions a lot more smarter going forward. It'll help left and right get together on land management issues. If we just focus on the economics, I think we can find more common ground than we have historically.
Okay, great. 2 minutes left. Does anybody on the panel have last thoughts?
I just gave.
Doug, you've got yours.
Let's help our state policymakers understand that outdoor rec really is a lot more important economically than people have historically given it credit for. That's my parting shot.
Great.
Yeah. I would say we need to rally around our youth. Young people in Utah and around the country, frankly, are suffering from mental health, anxiety, all sorts of struggles that way. Outdoor recreation is the absolute best medicine for that. There's a lot of research that supports the idea that outdoor recreation and time spent outdoors can, in some cases, be more effective than counseling and medicine.
Great. John?
I'd love to see us make recreation and conservation a part of Utah Trust Lands, formerly SITLA's mandate.
Great. Okay. Steve, anything left to end?
Yes. I'm just putting this in the chat. I just put my email. And if anybody has any specific ideas about potential campground locations or state parks, I'd love to hear them. Please email me. So there's my call to action.
Okay. All right. Thanks to everyone on the panel and everyone for joining us today. And I hope you can get outside and enjoy some of those outdoor recreation opportunities that we have right outside our door. So I hope everyone has a great Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.